Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. Welcome to the Oakville Public Library Board meeting for February 24th, 2022. Before we start our formal proceedings, I would ask that members of the board that we observe a moment of silence for the unfortunate situation that's happening in the Ukraine, perpetrated by that feckless thug against the innocent Ukrainian people. It's a terrible tragedy. And it's hard to get our heads around. I was just saying to our CEO a second ago, it's hard to get our heads around dealing with things like library matters when such a travesty is happening on the other side of the planet. So I would like everybody to take a moment, just reflect, pray to your God, and let's remember those folks in Ukraine that are suffering at Putin's hands at this moment. Thank you, everybody. I just point out that there are a number of relief organizations that are collecting money and support for Ukraine relief, including the International Committee of the Red Cross, as well as other Save the Children and a few other groups. So if you are able to do so, I would strongly encourage you to go to one of those websites tonight and pledge your support. They're absolutely going to need it. Having said all of that, thank you very much for your indulgence there. Madam Secretary, who is in cyberspace, are there any regrets this evening?
We have no regrets.
Thank you. Any declarations of pecuniary or conflicts of interest from members of the board this evening? We do not have any. We have minutes of our regular meeting that was held on January 27th. They have been circulated. Are there any comments, questions, errors, or omissions to report this evening? Janet?
I would just like one on 6.1. It says there's a focus on rapid decision-making when reviewing the bylaw. I think what we really spoke to is an emergency management protocol. Just so we're clear, because that's really was at the essence of it. So if that change is agreeable to folks, I would appreciate it.
I think that works. Did you capture that, Jessica? Thank you. Anything further? Janet, can I count on you for motion to approve the minutes? Thank you. Seconded by? Susan, thank you very much. Any comments, questions, errors, or omissions further? Any objections to the approval? Seeing none, those are approved. Ladies and gentlemen, I was so quick in getting through that first portion because it's been obviously for all of us a very emotional day. I have not remembered to do our land acknowledgement, which is very important to us as an organization. So I'm going to read that now. The Oakville Public Library is situated on the Treaty 14 and Treaty 22 treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Oakville is currently home to many different First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Regardless of where we come from, we are all interconnected through the land we live on, water that we use, and the air that we breathe. We are committed to a continuous learning journey and allyship. We seek to elevate Indigenous voices and lived experience to cultivate reconciliation in Oakville. Those words are particularly meaningful tonight when you read, regardless of where we all come from, we're all connected. It's, anyway, difficult time. Members of the board, we have 3 items on our consent agenda. 4.1 is the Oakville Public Library key board agenda items. 4.2 is health and safety report. And 4.3 are the CEO goals. Would anybody like to separate any of those consent items this evening? If not, I would be, Janet?
Can we just separate 4.3 for just that?
Sure, yeah, let's go. We'll separate that and then we'll take them all together when you're done. Unless that sparks other conversation, which is certainly amenable as well. Janet?
Okay, so my only, and I did reference this with Tara earlier this week. I think that the talent management goal needs to also include a level of a discussion with the board about our succession planning and our bench strength. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was inclusive in the understanding of what we are looking for, or or if the board would agree that that is part of what we're looking for in that goal and objective. I'm just a big fan that it's better to be clear about what we're looking for than at the end of the year say you might have missed the mark.
Tara, these are your goals, so how do you feel?
No, absolutely. As Janet indicated, her and I had a conversation about it earlier in the week, and although I think it was kind of implied, not to the degree that we had a conversation with, I can absolutely amend that goal just to call out succession plan and have that included as part of the overall talent strategy.
Is that satisfactory, Janet?
Yeah, I think that would be just put a bow on it. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you be so kind as to provide me with a motion for the 3 consent agenda items?
I will.
Thank you. They've been moved. Is there a seconder for those? Thank you, Bill. Last call for comments, questions? Any objections to the approval of the 3 consent agenda items? I'm not seeing any. Those motions are passed. We do. There are no confidential consent items or confidential consent items. So we move to item category 6, discussion items, starting with 6.1, comprehensive financial report as at December 31st, 2021. Is there any staff report on this, or are you just simply looking for questions?
I did want to highlight a couple different items.
Yep.
So the board has before them the comprehensive financial report ending in last year. Just to highlight that our surplus is higher than we had indicated coming into the end of last year. It is also a little bit higher than is indicated in this report. Were notified by finance a couple days ago that there was a reversal of an accrual that did not happen. So the surplus will increase by roughly $64,000. And that'll come through as part of the audit, which will come forward in April. Belinda and I had a discussion about that today, and she's going to do a full review of everything as we get through the first quarter, just to make sure what we happened twice last year will not happen again this year, and everything is all kosher in terms of all the accruals that we move back and forth. So I just wanted to highlight that, as well as the secondary piece, which is moving anything over $200,000 from our library development reserve into the Oakville Community Foundation Endowment Fund. And the reason behind that is just the return on investment is significantly higher with the endowment fund in order to make best use of those dollars.
Thank you. That's good news about the additional surplus.
Yeah.
Any questions on the 6.1 comprehensive financial report? I'm not seeing any. Would somebody like to give me a motion to approve the recommendations contained on the first page of the report? And that is that the comprehensive financial report at December 31st, 2021 be received, and that $114,129 from the Library Development Reserve Fund be moved to OPL's Oakville Community Foundation Endowment Fund. Certainly a happy situation. Pankaj, is there a seconder to that, please? Thank you, Andrew. Any further comments or questions? Objections? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, year-end employee retention and turnover metrics.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to this one just really quickly as well. You can see that we ended the year with 25 total resignations for 2020. This is a higher rate than we saw 2021, a higher rate than what we saw in 2020, but less than what we saw in 2019. There was a significant number of retirements, which is not surprising given the ongoing pandemic, but also we had a lot of people leave for other personal reasons. There's been a lot of movement in the library industry as a whole the past 2 years, with a lot of retirements through upper levels, which then sees opportunities grow at different levels of organizations across the province. So I think it actually speaks a little bit to Janet's point about succession planning and just how that's happening, because we're seeing a lot of those conversations happening across the entire industry with all the CEOs retiring and then the directors moving up and just kind of the movement that's happening. So,
okay. Questions on this report? I'm not seeing any. Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation contained on page 1? It's receipt for information only. Oh, I'm
Jeff,
sorry, Janet, you had
sorry.
your hand up. I apologize. I missed the resolution on my monitor seems a little wonky. I didn't see the yellow hand up in the corner.
Not at all. I was trying to let others ask questions rather than always me. So
Well, we count on you for that.
I'm really sorry. So I just have a couple. One is, so there's a reference to us losing folks for obtaining employment with more hours and the challenge with working multiple jobs. So is there a strategy to try and shift some of that loss this year? I just think of the knowledge that, I mean, you invest so much to get somebody up to speed, then we lose them. I understand that there's a balance of full to part-time, and there's probably a sweet spot there of what's right in terms of scheduling and cost. But is there a strategy to try and minimize that loss? Because increasingly other employers are, doing their best to make some shifts around how they can not lose their part-time staff.
No, absolutely. One of the things that we've been trying to do over the past couple of years, and actually one of the, I guess, shining lights of the pandemic is because we've had some resignations, we've given us some flexibility in our staffing component actually to create, I'm not gonna say just more robust positions. So our standard, or the standard that we're aiming for, is 24-hour positions. Previously, we had positions that frankly 8 hours a week all the way up. So we're trying to focus on creating a standard 24 hours a week because we think that's a good balance for that. We're also looking at opportunities where we can create full-time positions. The board will remember that we did do that as part of the 2022 budget cycle. We did create a permanent full-time CIS role for that, which is typically a part-time role, but we are looking to create more stability in the branches by creating full-time positions where appropriate as vacancies become available. So it is definitely something that we're paying attention to and trying to adjust our overall workforce positions where we can.
That's very helpful. Thanks for that reminder. Can you just refresh my memory? They qualify for benefits at what hour?
I think it's 18 hours.
Okay. All right, thanks for a reminder. And then my other questions are just around, do we know what the retention rates are at similar sized municipalities for libraries?
We did check on that. I think you asked about that last year, and we did check, and we were similar to the Halton libraries and saw lower than I think some of the other Ontario, but we can reach out and update some of that and bring it back at our next quarterly report on retention.
Great, those are my questions. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you for the questions. Are there any further? Can I get a motion to approve the receipt recommendation, please? Thank you, Bill. Seconded by? Susan, thank you very much. Last chance for comments or questions. Any objections to the approval of the receipt? Seeing none, that motion's carried. Thank you. CEO report for February 24th, 2022.
Excellent. So I've got some fun things as part of my CEO update. Just going to wait for the presentation to come up. Perfect. So just start with our COVID update. So we are expecting some changes from the province as of March 1st. The regulations still aren't out yet, so I can't go into a great amount of detail. We aren't expecting any significant impacts from that. The removal of the proof of vaccination doesn't impact us. There is the question of capacity limits and how that will be managed, so we are waiting on that. However, separate of that, we are planning on resuming in-person programs, but we will continue to offer a variety of both virtual and in-person as appropriate. We're going to resume our room rentals as of March 1st. And then we're hoping that we'll have increased capacity based on the 6 feet physical distancing. We are starting to bring out some of our furniture. We've had a significant amount of furniture in storage just to accommodate that. We're hoping to slowly bring that out. We are seeing more traffic come through with people looking for a space to study or read. So we are seeing an increase in demand with that. So once we get a better sense of what the capacity limits will be and the rules around the 6 feet physical distancing, which may or may not exist as of March 1st, we'll have a better sense of what that will look like. And then just some project updates. So The 16-mile relocation project is well underway. In the written report that was provided, I did highlight 2 issues that we were monitoring around zoning. I am pleased to let the board know that those have both been resolved. So we no longer have any zoning issues with the move of the facility from its current location up to North Ops. We are working with the vendor on creating a pre-qualification for contractors that'll be evaluated, that once we have everything go, it should actually go through that process relatively quickly. Right now, we are tentatively scheduled to start that move in June. That would likely mean that we would close the branch mid-May. And then they would actually start the move in June. But that also means that we should be able to open early September. So they've managed to cut that timeline down significantly from what we were originally planning for. And they're doing that by moving multiple modules at the same time. And looking at some other ways to kind of save time and moving it up the kilometer. For those of you who are interested, this is just where it's going. So you'll see its current location at the 16-mile sports complex, and then it's just going up the road to the corner. It's actually fantastic. It wasn't its original placement. Its original placement was more to the south, but the on-the-road placement, I think, is great. We'll get a lot of visibility there, and will be much easier to find. So we'll keep everybody up to date as that kind of goes forward, but just wanted to provide an update about where we are with that.
Can I just ask a question here for
Sure.
a second? What is the parking situation there? Is it going to be adequate?
It will be, yes.
In combination with the staff of the work center?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that we had as part of the conversation. I can't remember the exact number of spaces, but it was part of the conversation, and there was no concern, particularly the time of year that we're there. I think if we were there over winter with snow, because I do believe there's snow salting up there, that would be more of an issue than June to September. And then North Park, we continue to work on the detailed design for North Park. It is roughly, we're saying about 75% complete. We're still tweaking some of the space allotments, playing with some smaller buildings, but it's definitely starting to take place, come together. We do have 2 public consultations. I have slides for those further down, but I did want to provide the current plans, and hopefully everybody can see them. Sometimes it's hard to kind of, the way they give them to us and then how I can cut them out. But just remind the board that the library portion is at the north end of what will be the new complex. So we are at the end to that. So you'll have that front entry. There will be an exterior book drop. You'll come through into the entrance. The creation zone is right there. It will have a glass wall to the hallway to really show and hopefully draw attention into what's happening in there. You'll walk in. You'll see the customer service desk. There is an internal check-in as well, and open up to the public computers, children's age, collections. We have the Tinker Lab, which we're really, really excited about, which will focus on STEAM programming for toddlers and school-age children, I think. And then the program room. And then we're super excited about the children's outdoor area. That will be an enclosed space, but it's kind of hard to tell in this drawing. But if you look at the full north where it says terrace, there's actually another outdoor piece that's actually for the full facility. But there'll be chairs and pieces out there as well for people to be out to grab a book or a magazine and potentially be able to go out there and kind of spend time in the outdoors. It's just important for us for the children's area that it is enclosed. Sometimes kids can be runners, so we need to keep them safe if we're hosting story time or other events up there. So that is kind of what we're looking at for the bottom floor. Again, the collections are subject to change. We're really just looking to nail down the rooms. I will also highlight to the board that the full facility is going with gender-neutral washrooms. So you'll see that there'll all be individual stalls and then a shared sinks in there, which really I think does allow us to save space. We're really excited about bringing that in. And that'll just take us up to the top floor. You'll remember that it overlooks the library below, and up here we're going to have the photo and video cove for people looking to do podcasting or any kind of video recording. There's also a reading area, some meeting rooms. The quiet study will be up here, as well as another public washroom. So that is kind of how North Park is panning out. we're really quite excited about it. I mean, it can be kind of hard to vision with the plans, but it's going to be a really fun space.
Could we pause here for a moment to see if any questions on the space before we move on? Not seeing any. I have one. What is the device rental kiosk?
So we want to cut down on public access computers in that full desktops and move to more laptops lending. So what these kiosks are is they have laptops in them. They can scan their card. They can remove the laptop. They can use it when they bring it back. When they put it back in the machine, it wipes it and then recharges it. Wow. So it just automates a lot of that. We do have laptops that we loan out at a couple of the facilities, but it's very staff involved because it gets returned to the desk. They have to plug them in, whereas there are kiosks that manage that all. So we are looking at putting those in there because we think it would be a great feature for this facility.
And but you say the word rental. Is there sort of rental to me implies cost?
Yeah, that's the architect's words, but there is no cost, no.
Architects,
unless you don't bring it back. So.
Architects are always thinking about money.
Yes.
And are they these laptops only for use on the facility, or can they be taken out of the building as well?
At this moment, we really only have ones that are left in the building. We have had some initial conversations about what it would be to loan them to go out. We just haven't really investigated that yet. We are doing that a little bit, again, with our Wi-Fi hotspots and our iPads out for our senior connection. So we do have that in place. So I think it's something we could look at. It's just this intention, I think, was for people to come in because we're really cutting down on space in terms of the public access computer, the desktops. Because if you go into any of our facilities right now, like they take up a lot of space. And people come in sometimes with their own devices, and so they're really just looking for a space. So is a laptop kiosk or loaning laptops, and that they can use anywhere in the space, a better option.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, so we can move on.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew has his hand up. He's very teeny tiny on my screen, so it's hard to see him amongst all the spacecraft.
Very far away. Thank you, Tara. I appreciate the kind of the walkthrough. So it's interesting looking at the plans. Do you have any details in terms of the sort of the decor, the design that's going to be incorporated, or is that still a work in progress?
Yeah, no, right now we're really just looking at the space allotments, where everything is going to go, and that they're doing what are called like room data sheets to figure out where the power needs to go, where the the data needs to go, those pieces. Once we have the layout kind of laid down, then I think we'll move into aesthetics.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Anything further? Okay, carry on.
Okay. And just to go back to North Park, we are holding a public consultation in partnership with the town. We'll be hosting 2 different meetings, one March 22nd at 6 to 8, and one March 30th from noon to 2. The way those will be structured is there was a video that was recorded. Mayor Burton, as well as the ward councillors and Chair Knoll, all participated. That will be part of that, as well as the architect is building 3D designs of where we are with the space. So there'll be a presentation where we'll walk people through it. I have an overall agenda of the parks, the recreation center, and the library, and then there'll be breakout rooms. There'll be 2 different breakout room sessions, so if somebody has a particular interest in wanting to know what programs or collections might be in that space, or for us to gather that information, they're welcome to come to those breakout rooms. I'll be in one of those breakout rooms along with Simona, Danica Bernard, and Lisa Williams, our collections manager and our programming manager. So there's 2 different sessions for that. And you'll see a lot of communication start to go out about that shortly. I know that they're working on a communication piece for that, both our team and the town team. And then I also know that the team is looking at other options post these meetings about how to continue to gather consultation pieces. Just wanted to provide an update on the diversity and inclusion staff survey. So as the board knows, it launched on January 27th and closed on February 18th. In the board report, I think we were at 72% when I had to get that in. We finished with 78. I'm very, very pleased with that. As I said a couple times, CCDI really indicates that the response rate for a first round of this type of survey is around 47%. So for us to get almost 80, I think speaks highly of the trust that staff put in us. And so we should expect it to get the results in June. They'll come to the board, but those results will be fundamental in helping us develop that diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy that is in my goals for this year. So we'll keep the board posted once we get those results a bit later in the year. And then the last thing is just, as the board knows, we are down 2 members. So board recruitment is underway. Today's Beaver did have a posting for both the OPL board as well as the Spirit Nomination Committee. They went out as a joint posting. Both the town and the library will be putting out calls for applications, both through social and through the website. If anybody knows anybody who they think might be interested, please encourage them to apply through the town website. Or if they have any questions, they can absolutely reach out to me or the clerk's office, and we'd be happy to do that. So that is in progress, which we're very excited about. And that's what I had.
Thank you. Members of, Stephen.
Yeah, hi. I wasn't sure if I was a tiny little spot on your screen there, Jeff. That's why I was waving. This might be a moot point, but Oakville Beaver is great, but in our community at least, or at least my street, we don't get the beaver. I guess they never got a teenager. So you're presumably doing other channels as well, not just the beaver, like your socials and Instagram. And sorry, I'm in the middle of a very busy kitchen, so I can't hear everything. Oh, my wife's now staring at me. I apologize if you said that, but we don't get the beaver, so.
Yeah, we're required to post it. That's why we say the beaver, that's actually a requirement. However, it will go out through social, the website, we will all push it. It's a requirement for it to be printed in the local newspaper. But we're definitely not relying on the beaver for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all due respect to our friends at the beaver, yes, yeah. Okay, thank you.
But Tara said earlier, and I'll reemphasize it, please share that information with people you feel would be valuable members of the team. Pancake is next. Oh,
on Stephen's point, I actually have a completely different problem with the beaver. We do get the beaver and have for years and years, but lately, maybe for the past 2 years or so, certainly before the pandemic, they used to deliver the beaver to the door or toss it towards the door. Now they toss it at the bottom of our driveway. And I swear, almost to a house on our street, it goes right into the recycle bin, because by the time anyone sees that thing, the elements have got to it or cars have driven over it. And I never bother with the beaver anymore because it's a mess by the time I look at it. So we just throw it away. And I've called the beaver on this, and they've said, no, it's the paper carrier. And I've actually talked to the paper carrier or deliverer, and she said, no, that's what the beaver told us to do. So it's just strange.
Yeah.
So Stephen, I'd happily give you my beaver, but it'll be full of tire tracks and black ice and God knows what else. But anyway.
You can keep all the flyers. Thanks.
I will point out that beaver is also online, just to add just a little bit of extra color commentary there. Janet, you're up next.
So my question is around the community consultation. It sparked me because it looks like it's going to be a great conversation that you're going to have with North Park. And so, Tara, you had mentioned Tea for Tara might be something that you could restart related to kind of getting some insights from the other branches about how are they feeling about our programming, and the services. I get that we did a lot of work on the strategy to get a bigger picture, but now that we're able to have a greater connection with people, is that something you can see fitting into your busy schedule?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the Tea with Tara, and for those of you that don't remember, I was hosting a Tea with Tara event at different branches throughout the year, about one a month, inviting the community to come out and have conversations with me. And I think that was just starting to kind of gain some traction when COVID hit. So it is something that I'm looking forward to starting back up again, I think in the summer, fall, and really inviting the community, as I go out to each of the branches, the local community of those branches to come out and have conversations with me about what they're liking about our branches, but also what they potentially like to see in the future.
And my other question is just around and I probably should have asked it a bit earlier, but there's a thought that there's capital dollars for another kind of kiosk, express, et cetera, was noted in the finances. And I just noted to ask you in the update, when and how is that decision going to be made about where it's located?
So we do have one coming up at River Oaks. We identified that area as kind of like a bit of a no man's land in between the different branches. We're expecting that one to come up, I think, in Q2 of this year. We do have dollars for an additional one. We are looking to actually use some of that to buy a browse and borrow to temporarily put at 16 Mile while the branch is closed for those 3 months, and then reallocate that to a new location. We haven't really identified where that's going to go yet, but at 16 Mile Sports Complex, that would then allow us to have the lockers, as well as a browsing opportunity with the browse and borrow locker, in addition to the programming that we'll do there over the summer. So we are looking to use those dollars temporarily to go there and then move the browse and borrow and potentially bring in more lockers to another location. We just haven't identified where that's going to be yet.
And does can you in the future kind of report to us what is the criteria for the location, and how does that get determined, just in terms of those principles of accessibility and equity, et cetera?
No, for sure we can, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica?
I just wanted to inquire through the board if it would be helpful if I actually sent all of you the link to apply, and then if you have anybody that you know is interested, you can just forward them the link right to the town website, right where they can go and apply. Is that something? I'm seeing nodding heads.
I think
Yes,
that's a great idea.
I will do that.
But for absolute clarity, there's no commission paid on successful candidates. This isn't a headhunting opportunity. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah,
That's a great
unfortunately, there's no commission for bringing people in.
Thank you very much. That's a great idea. Thank you. Bill, you're up next.
Yeah, sorry, I would have asked this a few minutes earlier, but I couldn't find my raise the hand little thingy there. So anyway, I just had a question about the second floor of the library, and I noticed that there's a quiet room of some sort there, and I noticed that it shares the wall with the running track and the gym. And is that an issue? Having a quiet room there?
Yeah, you've noticed that we've brought that up repeatedly with the architects. They have assured us that it will not be an issue. Nick Valerio, who works very closely with us in FCM, is working very closely. We've brought that to his attention numerous times, that the quiet study right next to that, there has to be enough buffering between those two walls, that the quiet study is a quiet study. So it is something that we're watching. The architects aren't concerned, but we are continuing to just keeping a close eye on that, as well as just a few other spaces, because again, that video cove is up against the mechanical room. There's a couple other spaces we're keeping a close eye on and making sure that the architect really understands what our sound requirements are.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Pankaj. Anything? Oh, sorry. Thank you, Bill. I was looking at Pankaj, but I was hearing Bill. That's amazing. Anything further? I do not see anything. Can I get a motion to receive the CEO's update, please? Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Susan. Any objection to the receipt? I don't see any, so that is received. Thank you very much. That was a great update. Before we move to confidential discussion items, I'm just wondering, I do have a piece of new business I just wanted to potentially introduce. I know that we don't formally have a report, but I just thought it'd be worth mentioning under new business that we did meet as a committee to discuss the procedural bylaw. And I'm just wondering if Chair Cashman had a couple quick comments on that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Not at all. No, as Jeff reports, we met, Bill, Jeff, Tara, and I met, and reviewed the bylaws sort of preliminarily. We'll be meeting again next month in a few weeks' time. We'll be bringing forward recommendations to the full board for adoption of some housekeeping changes.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to announce, as was suggested by my introduction, that Andrew has been duly elected as the chair of that committee, and we thank him for his service. He did a wonderful job managing us through that process, and I'm sure he will do a yeoman service finishing it up and getting us to that point of a revised procedural bylaw. So thank you for that.
Thank you kindly.
Just so that we can essentially conclude our meeting when we come out of confidential, is there anything else to come up in new business? I'm not seeing anything. We do have a matter under new business, under confidential discussion items that we need to go in camera for. And I will report that, I don't have my cheat sheet, Jessica. I will report that we are going into a session closed to the public for the purpose of discussing, I believe, identifiable individuals. Is that roughly accurate? Okay, yes. That is accurate. Thank you, Jessica. I'm lost without my committee clerk.
I'm sorry, isolation problems.
Yeah, I know, it's fine. I'm just teasing anyway. So I need a motion for that purpose, please. Please and thank you, Susan. Thank you, Bill. Any objection? So that's carried. We are moving into camera. So let's give our IT friends a couple moments to get us ready to go, and we'll be right back with you. Members of the public who are watching us, thank you very much for tuning in this long. We will be adjourning in public session shortly, but there will be no other business to report to the public. So we appreciate your interest in the affairs of the Oakville Public Library Board. We're glad that you tuned in this evening, and we hope that you'll come back and watch us again next month. Same channel. Good night, everybody.
Kara?
Good night.
Yes.
Kara, can you let me know?
Yeah, I forgot. Try to lift it up. Cool? Yep. Okay. Yep.
I'm currently in my first of 3 years at Sheridan, so it's kind of fun to be at that point because you have all great ideas and you're not limited by actual technology. Sheridan College, in the glass department here, they ran a bit of a competition amongst the students. I submitted my design, and then it got sent off. One of the things that I did before I submitted my design to the town was I had a talk with the actual professors to make sure that it was doable.
It'll look not unlike this. The central piece will actually have a wave in it. It's got this oak leaf shape to it. When you look down on it, it'll have a nameplate on there, and then when it comes out of the mold, it looks not unlike this. It'll be on the end of the pipe, and we just break it off, and we put that in to cool. And then when it's done, we saw it off right about here and polish the bottom. So of course this one's been sawn already.
The process of the thing kind of goes like we start out with a spike of glass. We form we take a gather and we form it into kind of a conical piece of glass. And then we get a couple of what we call gathers. We gather glass on the end of a rod, and then we roll it in colored powder, which is basically really finely crushed glass with color in it. Then we melt that in We roll it a few times just to make sure that it's got lots of solid color on it. What we do is we take molten glass out of the furnace and we roll it in this colored powder, the glass color, and it sticks. It'll stick to the glass, the hot glass. And then what we do is we take it over to the glory hole and we melt it in. So the glory hole gets it nice and hot, reheats the glass. Once it's melted in nice and neat, I'll take it over to Paul there and he'll stick it on a piece. But I want to get it pretty hot so that I don't have I get a nice small trail for him. And then we apply that onto our spike, right? So we have two colors. We have two guys doing it basically. We'll lay on one color, then we'll flip it over and we'll lay on the other color. So we have basically 3 rods of color together, right? Because we don't want the glass to cool off too much after he's done it, after he's formed his spiky bit there. We don't want the glass to cool off too much, and we don't want to have to reheat it over and over and over again. It takes 2 of us with bit rods to form 2 colors, just so that we can put the one color on and then put the next color on. And then go and melt them together, because if we put one color on and then he melts it together, then we put another color on and he melts that in, it could melt in kind of a weird blurred shape. So if we put them both on at the same time, then they melt at the same rate, and that makes it much more crisp and nicer.
And so now we laid the color on the center bit, and we just have to melt the color in so it becomes one smooth pattern. Because if there's any seams or anything where the color is, when we plunge it into the middle, it's going to catch bubbles there. So that'll be little imperfections in the design.
Then we'll melt them together so that they're smooth without a lot of edges, because if we have a lot of edges, we'll trap air, and we didn't want a ton of extra bubbles or special design of bubbles, so we wanted to make sure that it's all nice and smooth. Then what we do is we extrude it out a bit lengthwise and give it a twist, a nice slow twist, and that gives it kind of that helix of color. In this you can see the spike of color, but it has this nice, about 2 revolutions worth of color, and 2 revolutions of twist in color. Then we put a bit of a wave into it, so it looks kind of more like a flame. They're dirt from gravity, so this puts a nice bend in it. Out of that wavy flame. Then we have a graphite mold that's made out of a big block of graphite. It's a 2-part mold, so it splits in half basically. I'll get a ladle of glass out of the furnace, a big ladle of glass, and we pour that into the mold so it's full. And then the guy who formed the spike with a twist in it plunges that into the mold. So we plunge it straight down into the mold. We let it cool off a little bit so that it firms up, because glass is kind of like taffy, after a few minutes. We wait a little bit longer and it seizes up a little bit more. It's still flexible but not solid.
Just doing this to cool the edges here, set it up a bit.
Then we pull it out of the mold and we flash it in the glory hole, and that's to even out the heat, but also the flame in the glory hole will polish the one end. So this end here gets its smooth surface from what we call flame polishing.
And so we have to let it completely set up before we put it away. Otherwise, if we put it away too hot, it's gonna deform when it's in the annealer. The internal heat in it will actually deform the piece.
Yeah, the heat actually moves kind of slow, and the internal heat will come out to the external part of the piece, and then when it sits on the grating in the annealer, because the shelves are great, it can actually take on the shape of the grating if it was too, if it becomes too hot. Now the annealer itself isn't that hot, even though it feels like it. When you stick your head in there, it feels like it. It's not hot enough to actually deform, but the interior of the piece could be 300, 400, 500 degrees warmer than the actual exterior, and then that soaks out to the outside.
Yeah, the new ones are at like 500 degrees, and these furnaces are at like 2,000.
Yeah. Then we wait for a while until it seizes up. As soon as it stops moving, then we'll break it off and we'll put it in the annealing oven.
Now we're just creating a stress point in the glass. If you, like, this is a really cool part now, so if I hit the glass, all the vibrations are gonna stop at that one point.
Then it'll sit in the annealing oven for about 57 hours. And that cools down slowly. And what it does is it takes all the stress out of the glass. Because all the forming that we do causes inconsistent heating throughout the glass, right? And even though we're flashing it and doing all kinds of things to it to try and even out the heat, it'll still have inconsistent heat through it. So what we do is we put it in the annealing oven and it bathes it in a 550 degrees Celsius for a good 25 hours or so. Well, everything in a glass shop is a team effort, right? So I came up with the design. You know, it's my design, but that doesn't mean that I'm the one who carries things out. I mean, there are a number of artists like that. They actually just design it, and somebody else actually makes the thing. In this case, I've got the skill set that allows me to help out, right? And then plus I get to supervise. I get to look and see what's going on. Some other first-year students that are there are Paul Vandenbiggert. He's the one who's putting the twist in the glass. He's quite good at it, so we figured why reinvent the wheel for one of us to figure that out. And then there's Matt Crosby, and Matt's helping out with everything else, bringing bids, opening the door. You need to have a hand in the glass shop because there's so many things that are really hot that you just can't do it. You just can't hold a pipe in one hand and try and open the door with the other hand. Especially with this thing, it weighs too much. It's a good 5-10 pounds of glass on there. So it's important that I get Paul and Matt to help out. Each one will be unique. It'll be at least slightly different. No matter how much we wanted them to be exactly the same, they'll always be a little bit different just because of how we did it. The shape of this award, it takes on the shape which is actually an oak leaf. So if you look at it, it's oak leaf shaped, right? And that's, of course, Oakville's own built-in iconography. So what we did is we placed these spirals of color in the center to kind of symbolize an inner flame. So it's kind of like the inner fire that runs the town. So the volunteers have, are this energy that runs the town, and you don't get anything done without having a good core of volunteers willing to do the things that need to be done. So, so I thought it was important to have that in there, and it also kind of symbolizes the inner fire of the actual people who are volunteers, because they have to have a certain dedication that you don't see. So it's kind of a dual meaning in that regard. You've got the inner fire of the town and the inner fire in the people who are the inner fire of the town. The complexity of the piece actually requires that you have a few extra hands, especially when we've got a two-part mold. One guy plunges the piece into the mold, but he can't let go of the pipe to try and extract it. So it takes another two people to try and separate the mold off of it, because it can stick. Glass can get sticky at that temperature, and it can get stuck in the mold. And if we leave it in there too long, it's just going to crack. So we'll have a ruined piece at that point. So because graphite really sucks the heat out of the glass, right? It's like doing anything with it, touching metal to the glass, it'll suck the heat out of the glass. So it takes a couple of guys in there, sometimes prying, sometimes physically holding on to the mold with a pair of gloves on, and then Paul can pull it up out of there once it's out, once it's been freed. It's important to pull up vertically so that we don't snap off some of the vertical striations in the mold, like these bits in here. That's, solid graphite in the mold, and if we twist it, we can snap them off, and then we've ruined the mold, and we don't want to do that, right? It takes a while to cut one of those things because it's 6 inches thick, so it takes a few hands to get things done. This is actually my first time in Oakville. It's a very nice town. Everybody's really nice here, and it's almost surprising, like how nice everyone is in Oakville, and also how dedicated volunteers are, and how important it is to actually give them some kind of award to recognize what they do. So it was great for me to sit down and go, hey, I get to make this thing.
Volunteers are basically selfless. It's selfless service. It's really giving to others. I know for sure that they're not in doing their volunteer work expecting to be recognized and to be thanked. But it really is, from my perspective, an enormous honor to be able to make this year the awards that will actually recognize them and thank them for the work that they do. Volunteers are the creatures that operate maybe between earth and sky and that keep a community together. The Community Spirit Award for this year is a functional box. That was the request from the committee. I had proposed something that would go on the wall, but it has actually the box itself has a lot of the elements that I had of my initial proposal. My initial proposal did include this waterfront line delineating the difference between the sky and the earth. So that has been retained in the box. The process of making the boxes has included working with 2 different clay bodies. One that's very groggy, a bit like having sand in it, so it's very textured. And the other one is a porcelain for the temperature that I'm firing to. So the interesting part about these 2 clay bodies is that they're really quite different. One is very smooth, and the other one is this, as
Thank you, members of the board. We are back in public session. I will report that we met in closed session to discuss matters about identifiable individuals and HR matters. Members of the board, we received a verbal update in camera, and I would appreciate a motion at this time to receive that verbal update. Thank you, Janet, seconded by Pankage. Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the receipt of that verbal update? Seeing none, that is carried. We have already dispensed with new business. I'll just ask one more time before we go to adjournment. Is there any further new business tonight? I don't see any. Can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting then, please? Nobody wants to go. Stephen and Bill, thank you very much. Any objection to adjournment? Thank you. This meeting is adjourned, and thank you for your work tonight. We did a good job, I think, and advanced the business of the Oakville Public Library. If the members of the public are still sticking around, then we want to thank you for your tenacity and staying through that closed session. And to all of you and to everybody, let's hope that when we meet again next month, the world's a little safer and saner place. Thanks, everybody, and good night.